Hi, welcome to Trends Talk. I'm Sarah Sladek, your host. And it is almost October. It's been a crazy year. I have a great guest here today to talk about technology because let's face it, 2025, the buzzword on top of everyone's mind and tongue is AI. So we're going to dive into that. But first, just a real quick welcome to those of you joining us either in the platform or watching us streaming on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you may be tuning in. We're so glad you're here. And if you are interested in our topic today, you might be very interested in the Next Gen Now Summit, which we're hosting in Washington, D.C. on October 30th. And it has a virtual component. So you don't even have to be in DC with us. You will have a facilitated virtual experience, which will be just as great. And so register for the Next Gen Now Summit at nextgennowsummit.com. Love to see you there. Okay, without further delay, please join me in welcoming Pamela to the stage. And Pamela, I have such a burning question for you before we get started, because you have a really funky job title, and I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly. You are a tech emotionographer, correct?
Yeah.
Did I say it right?
Yeah. I gave myself that title.
I love it. It's perfect. Why not? Right?
Yeah, well, I thought, I spend a lot of time trying to map out how our emotions and technology kind of mingle and are intertwined. And so I said, well, I feel like I'm trying to make a map of that. So I'm kind of like a geographer of emotion.
Yes, it's perfect. It's perfect. All right. So, Pamela, let's jump in with Q1, round one. And my first question is, as a person with a really cool title, Tech Emotionographer, what current stat or data point summarizes the need for prioritizing emotional intelligence?
Okay, well, there's so many. When it comes to technology and emotion, as connected as we are, what's been happening, what's kind of really striking from the 90s to now is that every few years, Gallup does a big survey of people, and they find that we have fewer and fewer and fewer friends across all age groups. And so that seems to me really an interesting paradox to think about, because technology's promise was to connect us, yet we somehow feel more isolated and alone and misunderstood than ever. We spend about 7 hours a day on our screen. I joke around. I'm like, well, I wake up, I look at the small screen, then I go to work on the medium screen. At night, I put on the large screen. But before bed, back to the little one in my hand again. It's just like, it's kind of, it feels like we're disconnected, sometimes even from ourselves and each other. And so I think with that in mind, emotional intelligence is probably the biggest survival skill that we can develop for ourselves.
Amazing. So yes, we're more networked than ever before, but not necessarily it's a close relationship with people is what you're saying. And there has been a lot of conversations about we're in a loneliness epidemic, especially among young people who've been raised with technology. And it is a interesting time to navigate. I want to pause and just ask you to share maybe just a teeny tiny bit about your background and how you got to be an expert on this topic.
Sure. Well, so I, in graduate school, studied human computer interaction, which is the psychology of how we use technology. And then for, well over a decade, I've been doing research, trying to understand how people you know, perceive themselves, each other, their relationships, using technology, with technology kind of mediating our communication. And one big part of my research is I have a very big ongoing diary study where people submit kind of snippets of their experience, whether videos or photos or quotes. So I draw from other people's knowledge because it's impossible to document on your own all the different ways that
Oh, yeah.
technology is impacting us. But in particular, what I'm interested in is not so much kind of, you know, stirring up fear among people, which, because I think we have plenty of that already, but looking at how do people adapt? How do people actually find fulfillment, strengthen their relationships? What are the good behaviors that we need to share and learn more about? So that's
Yes.
that's where my research is at right now.
Interesting. And you've worked with a lot of notable brands and the Pratt Institute and, just again, a really exploratory, interesting time as we talk about technology,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I've worked with a lot of big companies, like the big tech companies, of course, like Google and Meta,
Hmm.
Spotify, but also a lot of more specialized companies because we have our emotions wherever we go, and that
Yeah.
concerns our money, that especially
Yes.
online, that concerns, our travel, our homes, our health, all kinds of issues. So it's across the board, working with a lot of different organizations to try to understand, not just how easy it is to use a particular site or app, but how
Hmm.
does it impact our psyche, our
Right.
emotions.
Which is a great segue to my next question. So let's
Sure.
go to round two. All right. So round two. You are talking about the psychology, the psyche, the emotions, and I just have to ask, is emotional AI even possible? And why is that important to develop and create and achieve?
Okay. Well, it depends on how you define emotion. And right now, that's a really big topic. So for years and years and years, there was kind of a general agreement like, well, emotions were universal. We have a few of them that we all share. They're evolutionary. But then in the past couple decades, there's been a lot of discussion in all different areas, philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, economics, even looking at what are emotions and what does it mean. So, emotional AI is possible if you define emotion as data and you kind of draw it back to that baseline of, well, there's a few universals, and that's how it's been developed so far, is that we have technology that works with sensors. So sensors detect some signals. Maybe it is your pulse rate. You're wearing a wristband, it detects your pulse rate. If it goes up, you're agitated or excited. Could be positive or negative. Maybe it detects something from your facial expressions. Your corners of your lips go up and your eyes crinkle a little bit. Okay, that's probably a genuine smile, that kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
But and then those signals are translated by artificial intelligence into patterns. And so it can say, like, oh, okay, you're crinkling your eyes, your lip corners are turning up. That's happy. Um, that's kind of a leap, right? Because a lot of times we smile and we're just being polite, or it's appropriate, or we might smile because we're thinking about something else and we're not even in the moment. So there's a um, lot going on
A
behind
lot
that.
of
You might
nuances.
not be
Yeah.
actually happy, right? So the
Hmm.
technology still is kind of stuck in that mode because it's easy to translate those signals into some kind of pattern. And that's what AI does really well. Now, there's been more experimentation in recent years with looking at lexicon, so looking at the variety of words that we use. So sentiment analysis has been around forever. If you do any kind of, you know, web-based research or anything, you'll see sentiment analyzers that do positive and negative sentiment, and they're getting more nuanced to do anger and fear and joy. But it's developing a little bit beyond that too. And so there are people working on like, well, what if we had a more complex and nuanced view of emotion? What would that look like? Could AI handle that? So I think, right now it's pretty limited. Emotion AI is possible if you have a really pared back view of what emotion is. And when you have a really pared back view, that comes with a lot of dangers, right? Because it's like, well, you could falsely sort of label somebody or pigeonhole them into an emotion category, like, oh, they have, a scowl, they're an angry person, or they're going to cause trouble, and we don't want that, So I think that has a lot of potential downfalls.
Right.
But I say that, and I think we've got one thing going on that maybe is under the surface with emotional AI that we're all experiencing a little bit, is that I think, and a lot of this is black box, so I don't know for sure, but it seems like under the surface of our favorite chatbots, ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, that there is some recognition of the emotions in our words, at least, might even be in our voice if we're using voice input. And so a lot of people are looking at that now and saying like, well, maybe that's like weak empathy in AI. And so, but we don't know that much about it because we don't have access to exactly how they're working. It's not open source. But I suspect some of it is kind of seeping into our interactions already with generative AI. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And I think it's, like when I ask Alexa something and then I say thank you, sometimes we don't even realize that we're beginning to humanize some of our tech tools, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure that'll continue to evolve, right?
Absolutely. We've always done that. I mean, there's a theory of technology called CASA, computers as social actors, that has been around, since the 80s, that says we humanize our devices and we talk to them as if they were people, even if they're, Alexa or your Roomba.
Yeah. And my Alexa just went off. That's really funny. Okay, so let's go to the next question. I want to remind our audience, by the way, yes, I'm asking Pamela questions, but whether you're watching this on a streaming channel or whether you're in the platform, you can submit questions, and I can relay them to Pamela as well. So, all right, round 3, here we go. This is a deep one, deep thinking, right? But obviously, as we were just saying, we kind of humanize our devices, but how is technology changing us as human beings? So you mentioned at the beginning this, yes, we're networked, but we also have a lot of isolation that's happening and loneliness that's happening. Potentially we're addicted to our devices. There's a lot of debate about that and conversations and study on that, but I'm curious your additional thoughts on how is technology changing us?
Yeah. Well, I think it's clear that technology couldn't but change us, right? I mean, we design technology and for what we want it to be, what we aspire to, but then technology in turn kind of designs us as well, right? Because it gives us certain paths that we can take or not take. And so I think I think it's already changed how we relate to each other, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean, despite the fact that I opened by saying like, "Oh yeah, loneliness is a problem," it's not clear that that's only because of technology. There's a lot of other potential reasons that loneliness could be a big issue in our society
Yeah.
right now. I do think that technology is changing how we communicate in a really important way. And that's kind of creative and fun to see, honestly. Um, we have to adapt to spaces that maybe don't have a lot of means to convey our nonverbal expressions. And that's a huge part of emotion. So some experts say that's up to like, more than 50% of our emotional communication is nonverbal. And so we've found lots of really creative ways to supplement that communication, whether it's adding simply emojis or a million exclamation points or memes or GIFs or, TikTok face poses, right? Like,
Right.
there's like all kinds of ways where we try to infuse our communication, put that emotion back into it. So I think that's a big change. I think it also changes our mindset and what we think of as possible and what kinds of things we can do, but also what kinds of things we can feel. And that's probably why taking a digital detox or saying like, wow, I wish we could go back to the good old days, whatever those were, um,
Yeah.
because that's a matter of opinion, but doesn't really work, right? Because we have already changed. Our minds can't reset to a time that we might not have ever even known in the first place. So the example I always use is like, you can go put down your phone, go on a nice fall stroll in the woods, but you're still going to be thinking about how it would look on Instagram. You might be thinking about, wow, I wish I could share this with somebody. Oh, you know what? My friend couldn't join me on this walk. So when I get back, I'm going to text them and tell them about the funny little squirrel community I saw out there or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's already kind of fundamentally changed how we relate to each other and how we think about the world. And it's not always a a bad thing, but I don't think there's like a rewind button to
Yeah.
go back.
Right. Yeah. So then that kind of begs the question, are we going to have eventually kind of almost like a backlash to all this tech technology influence and implementation in our lives? Are we going to have fatigue from it and begin to
I
use less of it? It
I
sounds like you're saying there's no way that'll happen.
um I mean, I think it will happen in bits and pieces, right? People will hopefully find ways to use technology that in ways that suit them, that are intentional, where they don't feel like, oh, I'm just being pulled into a feed of, AI slop. And I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I'm addicted. I don't feel any control over that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but I do see, especially with my students, for instance, who are all, early 20s, pretty much, this kind of craving to not have everything
Yeah.
be online all the time. So I think the two, we have two wolves inside of us and they need both now. They need both things to be
Yeah.
experience, life in all its dimensions, and some of those dimensions now are technological, and a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
are still.
Yeah. Interesting thought, those wolves. And I think that's so true. Okay, let's go to the next question. All right. So, what are three steps, if we get real tactical, what are three steps organizations can take to prepare for advancements in AI, or if not AI, then technology in general, but Um, Obviously, there's a lot of fears, a lot of resistance. And as you're reminding us, we keep moving forward, we keep innovating, we keep creating new technology all the time. So, how do we prepare for this constantly changing landscape?
Yeah, I think a big thing that a lot of organizations and individuals for that matter don't think about is that how kind of the psychological effects of artificial intelligence, right? We hear a lot about like maybe fear, people afraid of losing their jobs or not being able to keep up. And that's, valid too. But it's also kind of reshaping um, our relationships in an interesting way. And so I think organizations need to think beyond just like, okay, we're going to get the latest, greatest tool. We're going to look to our competitor and do whatever they're doing and think more about the people that are actually engaged with their platform, their brand, their product, and how they're going to be impacted by AI, not just, oh, it's going to make them more productive or it's going to be more convenient, but it's like, will it make them feel more creative? Will it give them an emotional outlet to vent because they don't want to burden their friends? A lot of people use chatbots like that. Will it help them to work through what they're feeling before they actually go and talk to somebody? Like what are kind of the bigger life goals that people have besides efficiency, productivity, faster, cheaper, better.
Yeah.
And because that's where you're going to build a bond. If you're an organization, that's where you're going to have that real human impact.
Well, and technology opens up the opportunity for more creativity and human impact, right? So,
Yes.
in a way, it could be argued that more technology actually leaves space for more humanity, potentially.
It potentially
Yeah.
could. I mean, another thing that organizations should lay out besides thinking more big picture about sort of the human goals and needs behind AI, and not just efficiencies or metrics like engagement. They should also be thinking about how can they um, set out their principles of you know creating and designing for trust and
Hmm.
for showing care, because I think those are going to be huge, right? I think one, we talk about trust a lot, I think, in the user experience design world and the tech world. And there's a few principles behind that. It's like, well, it should be fair, it should be accountable, and there should be some transparency. But I think trust even goes beyond that to show like some benevolence, some care,
Right.
something bigger behind it. That's what's gonna make people feel more comfortable and um and help them in their
Mhm.
lives if they feel that, because we have that same response to other people in our life as well, right? If you can trust somebody, if you sense that they care about you, then you can be authentic, you can feel vulnerable, you can care for them in return. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that's another kind of non-obvious thing
Right.
that organizations should lay out.
Right. So it's really kind of what I'm hearing you say is that it's not just thinking about technology is making us really, in a way, more technical,
Yeah.
meaning efficient and productive, but rather looking at some of the other aspects and sides of what technology can bring.
So, I mean, that's the thing, we don't wanna feel like robots ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
right, right. We don't want to be cogs in the system. Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like that,
Hmm.
where it's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
gotta get through this, gotta do this, check, check,
Right,
check."
right.
Um, and that can be dehumanizing.
Yeah. Well, I like that approach, that thinking. It's really interesting. Okay, we have one more
Okay.
question.
Okay.
So Q5, round five. What trends are you? And again, I am guessing you are on the edge of trends, just given your job and what you do. So, what trends are you currently watching and advising others to prepare for,
Okay.
Pamela?
Okay. Well, a few things. So I think honestly, if we want to look at the future of AI, we don't want to look at, enterprise white papers or big tech company announcements. I look at how young people are using it because they have the time and the energy and the creativity to experiment with every new technology that comes out. And so all the trends I'm watching are no surprise emotional, but I'm thinking about emotion as an interface. We already see some elements of that with like mood-based playlists,
Mm,
and ways that people want to engage with lots of ambient spaces online, ASMR, all these spaces where we can really like lean into our feelings or even feel totally new weird things like AI, ASMR. I mean, that's like, what am I even feeling?
yeah.
I'm watching an AI seal with an AI scientist getting AI barnacles scraped off of it, yet I'm still, and I feel like chills, but also disgust at the same time. So like
Yeah.
the way we're playing with moods and emotion with technology, I think is really interesting and it's creating sort of this new way of feeling. So I'm watching that. I'm watching synthetic relationships, AI
Mm,
companions and
right.
co-pilots. Obviously, we all have different AI attachment styles, and some people, get a little too close, and other people manage to sort of keep a relationship with their chatbots that seems healthy. And yet, even if it does seem kind of familiar or, friend like, I'm interested in that. Like, what's going to happen with
Mm,
that? Um, and then maybe a third one would be like, AI does cognitive tasks. So I'm really interested in what ways we're going to find to be more creative and more empathetic and more, um, kind of leaning into to that emotional side of ourselves when AI can maybe take away some of those other you know,
mm,
mundane, everyday
yeah.
tasks. So, those are 3 things that I'm looking at.
Yeah. So, Pamela, I have to ask because we started this conversation talking about technology isolating, and we're
Mhm.
ending this conversation talking about technology really becoming, emotional and part of us and all of that. So, do you think the advancements in technology will actually put us more in touch with relationships, with feelings, with emotions? Are we becoming going to become more aware of our emotions and our thoughts and feelings?
I I hope so, and I think so, and I think that could happen a few different ways. I think it could happen by us simply taking more control and saying like, "You know what? This whole push and pull of like, I know it's making me feel terrible, so I'm gonna lay off of it for a while. Then
Mhm,
I have to
mhm,
go back to it, and then I'm going back." We know that's not working, right? And so if we can develop strategies that provide kind of a better balance, I think that could help. I think that on the reverse side of things, if things get so bad that people are like, like I think of the latest platform that Meta and probably OpenAI is going to launch is like a TikTok feed of AI created stuff,
mm,
right? And
mm.
I think we could get so repulsed by it
Yeah,
that it would
yeah.
sort of push us in the opposite direction and say like, "Hey, what technology do we really need in our lives, and
Right.
let's prioritize that.
Interesting.
So I don't think, however, there's going to be like a magical technology that like makes us all, feel better and be caring and have more emotionally rich lives.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that. Even emotional AI is pretty limited, maybe has its uses here and there. That's not going to do it, because the magic is in us. It's not in
Right.
the technology.
That's right. So important to remember. So important to
Yeah.
remember. Oh my gosh, such a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on Trends Talk, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. This was fascinating. And I don't know, I'm leaving with some real interesting perspectives about where technology is taking us, and I hope you are too. It's important to be moving our organizations forward instead of backwards. So that starts with knowing the trends. So thank you so much, Pamela, for being here today.
Thanks.
And tune in for our next Trends Talk next month. See you soon.
All right. Bye.